goes a long, long way. I just had a patient of mine that was, again, dealing with significant back pain that came on in the last few weeks. And it had to do with now he's not going to the office, his work, he is sitting a lot more when he's working from home. But he got to the point where he literally couldn't stand up for more than 30 seconds without pain. So it's like, well, how are we going to get you to a standing desk right now if you can barely even tolerate standing? And that's literally what we started with was, I want you to take 20-second breaks standing up very frequently throughout the workday. And so if you are at the point that you feel like you can comfortably stand for 10 to 15 minutes, once again, set an alarm every hour, try to stand. The ratio that I like to see for people is either more like 50-50, so 30 minutes you're standing, 30 minutes you're sitting, or working your way up to standing for 45 minutes, sitting for 15, but doing that every hour. So when people think like, oh, I'm going to get a standing desk for home, think like, oh yeah, I stood all morning and then I sat all afternoon. So I was doing 50-50, but the better thing for our bodies is the variety. So breaking it up by hour instead of, chunking it all morning I stood and then all afternoon I sat down. So that gets, and honestly, that keeps you fresh mentally too throughout the workday. Like I know if I find I've been sitting for an hour or two, I'm like, one, not only are you super stiff and feeling awful when you get up, but also I'm just like over it. I get brain fog. And I mean, I like to be up and around and moving anyway. So it's hard for me to concentrate for a long time on the computer. But even if you maybe don't have that kind of a brain that you need that stimulation or that change, I think you'll find that it really does help kind of refresh your system, especially if you're maybe stuck on a project that, you are stuck on some portion of it and you just need to step away. Doing a little movement break and coming back, I think you'll find will really help mentally refresh you as well.
I think that's a great reminder. I take it as a great reminder is doing the standing and sitting on an hourly basis versus I stood this morning, I'm going to sit this afternoon.
Yeah. And that's where having like a little, I mean, I know sometimes phone timers can be really obnoxious, but I know if I put a sticky note on my computer, I'll pay attention to it for like the first morning and then it just becomes background noise decoration on my laptop. So that's where I think having some kind of a little timer on your phone is helpful for taking those breaks. Maybe make it a nice, pleasant chime or something that's like, oh, it's my time to stand.
Well, there's a couple of years ago we wrote an article about this, but it was taking the point of having kind of different physiological responses to exercise, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes a day versus the constant movement throughout the day. And even I think it was a research article, but the image was blue was sedentary and then yellow-red was the movement component. And so at the end of the day or the morning, these people had this kind of this yellow or red for exercising, but the rest of the day was entirely blue. And the outcome of the research was essentially, that's great, you need that, but it's still, there are long-term issues of having this much blue in your day. So thinking there's two totally different biophysiological responses. You're having exercise to actually moving throughout the day.
Yeah.
I'll figure out a way in the comments here to the show notes to put a link on that. But it reminded me of that image that the study had.
That's why I think as life changes and I potentially will be doing more computer work, I would love to have a desk. Yes, that's a thing. And of course, me as a movement nerd, I'm like, why doesn't everybody have a treadmill desk? I can just sit and walk and be doing my thing, do my webinars walking, but try to keep it steady so I'm not moving around too much.
I'm
Perfect.
Sure, yeah, I'm sure there is. We can wire your power to be based on your feet.
Perfect. So the other thing I wanted to touch on with that reminded me, the other thing that I think people like to hear is that if you stand for more of your workday or you're standing during your workday, you actually burn 11% more calories standing working than you do sitting and working. So for those of you who feel like you've put on the COVID-15, that can go a long way to helping your metabolism as well. That's a whole other topic for Chef Nikki to talk about in addressing your COVID-15 The last thing I wanted to touch on as far as actionable things to address to help with pain that's maybe come on during COVID is that stress component. So what do you do about it? Again, Dr. T is going to go in depth on mental health and physical health next week and how they're tied together. But some things to think about now is we already touched on it, the awareness or mindfulness piece. That doesn't just go for, taking 10 minutes to think about what did my movements look like then? What is it now? And what can I change? Yes, I want you to spend some time to do that. But mindfulness in general of, having that awareness throughout the day of, wow, my back is hurting more, kind of thinking about why might that be? So, oh, I haven't gotten up from my chair in 3 hours. Well, that's a problem, and that's probably part of why your back is hurting. So having that mindfulness throughout the day of one, kind of checking in with your body, seeing if you are having some discomfort and thinking about why that might be, and that being kind of your cue to get up and take a movement break. But ideally you want to, not wait for pain to tell you to get up. So having that mindfulness of, just keeping an eye on your schedule throughout the day to take those movement breaks. But the other piece of it too, seeing how your body is, or I guess I should say your mind is feeling when it comes to anxiety and stress. I think a lot of times, there's a lot of hardship happening for a lot of people right now during this time. Like I was watching the news this morning, like the old lady that I am, watching my morning news, local news. And there was a woman talking about how, the rent is about, people are going to have to start paying rent again. And she's out of work and has 2 kids to support. And, you could tell just hearing her talk, and she was so tearful. Like stress levels are very, very high right now. But kind of taking a pause and realizing, if you find yourself kind of spinning out with your thinking of, I'm getting really anxious thinking about all these things, potentially, yes, there's some things that you can control and you can do things about, but worrying about them all right now at the same time, like I am not getting paid. I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. I don't know how I'm going to feed my family. Those are, of course, all very serious concerns, but thinking about them all the time and letting them affect your body and your tension and your stress level are not productive, and they're not healthy ultimately. So taking a pause, and when you catch yourself having those thoughts, regardless of what it's about, doing some deep breathing. So the easy way we like to work on deep breathing with people is just 4-second inhale, 4-second exhale, potentially doing some breath holds with that. So there's something called box breathing, where you can do a 4-second inhale, 4 seconds holding it in, 4-second exhale, 4 seconds holding it out. But for the easy piece, I know for me, if I'm kind of catching myself, I just like to think of the slow inhale, slow exhale, really focusing on using my whole lungs. A lot of time when we get really stressed, and especially because a lot of us sit at a computer a ton, we get very upper chest breathing, which feeds into the part of our nervous system that adds to stress. And again, it all becomes this snowball effect. So trying to cut that at the knees and, really get your body to down regulate by breathing is going to help you, sit there and have, the mindfulness piece too. Okay, this is scary. I recognize that this is a serious thing, but let me try to break it down in, here's a smaller actionable step I can take to address this problem. It can be very overwhelming when there's 10 insanely stressful things going on in life that, one, we may become kind of paralyzed by overwhelm. So I think taking one of those things of, okay, I'm out of work, I need to make money, which ultimately will help me pay my rent and feed my kids. What can I do to try to address that? Okay, I'm going to sit down for an hour and do a job search, trying to break up whatever your stressor is, thinking about what's a small actionable step that I can take that's going to help me work towards my goal. I think goes a long way in helping manage that stress and making it, like I said, more manageable. So having the mindfulness piece, and then also making it smaller steps, actionable, and meditation piece when it comes to stress. So the nice thing is right now, if anybody's heard of Headspace, I've seen a lot of ads on TV for it too. But one, if you're a healthcare worker, a teacher, I don't remember what all people they give it to for free anyway. Actually, now during COVID, if you're unemployed, you can also get the Headspace app for free. So it's a guided meditation app, and they have so many different topics, and a nice, soothing Australian accented person leading them. So it's great because if again you have if you feel like stress and anxiety are the main thing that you're dealing with, they have guided meditations to help with that. If you just want something to help you sleep, they have sleep guided meditations. And if you're not really one that likes to listen to a voice to meditate, also like soothing noises that you can do your deep breathing to, and it's something to help get you into a more calm and relaxed state. So I think it's very, very worthwhile for everybody, whether you feel like your stress level is high or not, to take some time each day to have that time to yourself to focus on your breathing, and do some mindfulness and meditation practices. Even if you're not into the woo-woo stuff, focusing on your breathing and taking a pause from the stress of life and letting yourself just, I'm gonna deep breathe now, can go a long way for how you feel.
I think so. For me, like the woo-woo stuff, I can't. It's not my cup of tea particularly. But what we see in our data, and I know I experienced this, is there's a direct correlation between doing the simple stuff, just like our DRM, and then improvement in emotional health scores. In conversations I've been having a lot with HR folks, is kind of talking about the connection of mindfulness to just, so like the daily DRMs that we offer, just that one technique, one thing, 10 minutes, you're focusing on your body or your breath in some cases. But seeing that actually, that down regulation component. So DRM, for those who aren't familiar, for us means down regulation and mobility. It's a category of things that we do that are based on improving musculoskeletal health, with it's a direct secondary outcome. It actually improves kind of emotional health outcomes, as I mentioned. But the point is to try to get people to work on tissue, work on joint, something. But the relax, either whether it's a tissue work or it's just the focusing on that one thing for those 10 minutes, that's as simple as the contact of a ball in your pec or just the position of your spine, whatever the DRM is. For me, that's helpful. I know that if I do that for 10 minutes, then whatever was in my mind before has been calmed, and on I go.
Yeah.
2 cents.
Yeah. For me, I like it at the beginning of the day. Whether it's the mobility piece, I typically put those more around workouts and at bedtime. But for me, my like mindfulness time is I am very fortunate to live at the beach, but especially on the mornings that I take advantage and I go out and I walk, there's hardly any people out. It's really cool because just about every morning when I go out, there's some kind of sand sculpture that I would never see if I was going in the afternoon, because people manage to destroy them throughout the day. But like if you go out before 8 a.m., there's typically at least one really cool, either like a quote written in the sand, really like fancy, or these beautiful sand castles that I would never see otherwise. And I use that time to kind of set my goals and my intentions for the day. And I may do one of the like Headspace guided meditations. So having that, I notice such a big difference on the days that I'm able to do that versus when I don't, as far as just feeling more at peace and more, what's the word? Not even necessarily productive, but just, feeling really good about my day. It makes a difference. So I think if you're one that maybe struggles with stress, try, if you can, to start your day with something like that. And then, if you also potentially struggle with sleep, having a practice like that before bed, whether it's a down regulation technique, is really nice, especially if you are dealing with tension and discomfort somewhere, doing some kind of mobilization and working on your breathing while you do it before bed. Like I have so many people that, and I know for myself too, that it's like I can just knock right out after I do that. It makes such a difference to let your system calm down and prioritize your breathing versus like, oh, well, tomorrow I need to get this done, that done, da, 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 and the stress just ramps back up. So be intentional about your breathing.
I will say one thing we found about having young kids is that the mats that you lay out for your kids are the perfect place and it's right there in the middle of the living room. You got to use it just to lay down on it and do these types of things.
Perfect.
So I would say kids or no kids, get a mat. Such a good tool.
Yeah. So those are the things that I want you to take away. So having the awareness, taking the movement breaks throughout the day, do what you can about your workstations and make the changes necessary. Refer back to our videos on what your station should look like. And then, just trying to stand more while you're working throughout the day, if you're able to. I know I have a couple people who, with their data entry and the way the monitors are, they say they can't stand for work. So then that's where taking the movement breaks are that much more important if you're not able to do some of your work standing throughout the day. And then trying to keep your stress in check with mindfulness, taking pauses throughout the day to even do just some deep breathing. So taking a movement break, and then maybe in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to do some deep breaths even while I'm sitting at my desk. And putting that intermittently throughout your day goes a long way. So that's hopefully helpful for everybody. I know when I incorporate all of these things, I definitely feel a lot better because I was getting all these new aches and pains. I don't know if it was hitting 30 or the fact that I was sitting at my desk a little bit more throughout COVID, but I was like, man, where did this stiffness come from here? And then I listened to my own advice, as I should, and imagine that I felt better.
Hard to do.
Yeah, we are our own worst patients. I know that firsthand.
Well, I've been fired by Teresa many times as a patient. Probably get fired by you too at some point. So.
Nah, you're good. But I do need to send my husband to see Teresa because he does not listen to me either. Yeah. So, all right.
Well, yeah. So if there are, we got a handful of questions here, but as other questions, if anybody else, feel free to continue to ask those using the Q&A tool. There's a question here about the stress and how that makes pain worse. And I know you mentioned a little bit about that cycle, but can you talk a little bit about just physiologically, just pain response, I should say.
Yeah, so the main way or the easiest way to understand it is both feed into your sympathetic nervous system, which increase cortisol levels in the body. Increased cortisol increases the sensitivity of your body to pain and painful stimulus. And so basically the fact that both of them feed into that sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, is where they continue to make each other worse, because one ramps that system up and then the other one ramps it up even higher, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse to where you just feel like a ball of stress and anxiety, and that is a physiologic response. Pain feeds into that system the same way that stress does. You can kind of think of stress as mental pain in a way. So it's two of the same thing feeding into the system, that ultimately causes so many downstream effects of, it can throw your hormones off. Obviously, it can potentially affect your sleep. Your sleep is also going to affect your hormone levels. Like, everything is so interconnected. And so by at least, and again, it can feel kind of overwhelming when it's like, well, if I just, if I sleep better, well, I'm still stressed, or I'm stressed, but I'm not sleeping, taking one of those pieces and trying to, this week I'm going to focus on getting more sleep. And so setting an intention of, I'm going to be in bed by 10 o'clock each night. I'm going to make that a priority. So pick one thing. It really helps bring the stress of addressing and making these changes, bring that stress level down, and make things more manageable, and ultimately, able to make those changes a little bit easier.
Thanks, Doc. Um, there's a comment about being afraid of, with COVID, of actually going into a clinic and dealing with, in this case, it looks like shoulder pain. So what can be, so in that, what the question is, what can you suggest for folks who are a little bit fearful of going into an actual clinic?
This right here, our beautiful faces over the interwebs. No, I mean, if there's one good thing that's come out of COVID is that telehealth is really taken off. It's always been there, kind of lurking in the background, but not well understood or well trusted. But the more it's been incorporated both with physicians, physical therapists, mental health professionals, all practitioners across the board, they're realizing like, oh, wow, this is actually a very good thing. And you can still get a lot done. I think a lot of times people, especially when it comes to physical therapy and addressing musculoskeletal health and pain, they feel like, well, I need somebody to touch me, which, that does go a long way when it comes to, practice and feeling better. But ultimately, especially in the way that we operate, addressing movement patterns, daily habits, kind of looking at you as a whole person, both in the way that you move and what life looks like right now. That is what is ultimately way more meaningful in making changes and getting out of pain than me putting my hands on somebody for 10, 15 minutes. Again, it's nice to have that available, but when it comes to lasting change, manual therapy is a great adjunct to help short-term relief of pain, but ultimately it's making those changes of what is it in your day that's causing pain, what is it in the way that you're moving or where your tightness is. And there's tools and exercises and things available that you can do on your own at home to address the issues that we would in the clinic. So the people that I've worked with over telehealth have gotten just as much value out of our sessions as if they were coming in. And they're thankful, one, to, potentially if they're driving from across town, yes, there's no traffic, but, just to not even have to make that. I have a busy mom of 5 who today was first day of school. So she has all of her kids in different corners of the house on Zoom calls. And she was able to use that time to do a telehealth session with me. And not have to figure out what to do with 5 young children while she drives to her physical therapy appointment. So I think especially now when, potentially you can't leave home because you have small kids, it can go a long way. And we're great at being able to incorporate the young puppies that, oh, I love seeing the dogs that come into the sessions. Like that makes it for me too.
that goes into a little bit. There's a much longer conversation about philosophy of care and empowering people with things versus, for lack of a better term, babying them with, I'm going to move your arm and move your shoulder around and whatnot, versus saying you learning the movements and getting those daily wins to empower yourself with the knowledge and tools. I'm speaking our mission there on the back wall there, but to empower you with the mission and the knowledge and tools to make the changes yourself.
Backwards, but it's there.
Let's just for the sake of time, let's start closing this up. So thank you, Dr. Megan, for your time, and everybody who's joined. Thank you for your time and the questions. So this is a To Your Health episode. It's one of 4 live expert categories that we have on the platform. The others include those daily DRMs that we mentioned. We've got an Ask the Doc series and then live fitness classes. I mentioned at the beginning which ones are coming up. I think we have a fitness class starting in 10 minutes. The mission that we have, as we just alluded to, is to empower people and employees to achieve a lifetime of physical freedom with knowledge and tools. And so that includes musculoskeletal health, that includes emotional health, and that includes fitness. And so for any guests today who'd like to test out the platform, just go to MovementRx and click on the digital rehab option to get started. There's a 14-day money-back guarantee. Are there any guests who are responsible for workforce health? You can go to movement-rx.com/hope and schedule, we call it a hope session. It's basically 15 minutes to talk and see if it's our specific approach would fit your workplace. And I will add both of those links here very quickly for everybody to take a look at. Digital rehab for folks who are individuals, and then the hope is to schedule a call with the team. So with that, again, Dr. Megan is starting to dance. Either it's must be eating time.
Lunchtime.
Just gotta feed her. So thanks everyone. Look forward next week. Dr. T will be on. We're talking about the intersection of emotional and physical health. So
thanks for joining us. Bye, everybody.